When a woman gives herself fully to a cause, that cause is invincible. A passionate and tireless fighter for women's rights, Hugo Chavez, the favorite son of Venezuelan mothers, with his words and actions, made visible, dignified, and vindicated our role in history. He spoke to us about Apacuana, Urquía, Juana Ramírez, la Avanzadora, Luisa Cáceres de Arizmendi, Manuelita Sáenz, and Argelia Laya. Now, in revolution, they are references of our struggle and of the construction of socialism. That is why each day, as far as possible, I will facilitate, I will promote and help that Venezuelan women continue to take on leading roles from the highest levels, as they say, to the levels of daily and direct work in neighborhoods, in communities. As of 1999 began the road, our road of achievements, with the inclusion of non-sexist language in the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Article 88, that recognizes the economic contribution of housewives, the Women's Development Bank, the approval of National Women's Institute, the Madres del Barrio mission, and finally, the Ministry of Popular Power for Women and Gender Equality, which shows the firm will of our feminist Chavez to give us women of the homeland Matria a voice and vote. This is why I say a true revolutionary, a true socialist must be truly feminist. Thank you, Commander, for showing us the free, socialist, and feminist homeland that you dreamed of.
Chávez feminista vive.
Feminist Chavez lives on. I greet you all. My name is Laura Franco. I'm a member of the Simón Bolívar Institute team for peace and solidarity from Venezuela. This is a tool that was built during the Bolivarian Revolution to strengthen brotherhood and to strengthen internationalist struggle, exchange between the revolutionary Venezuela and the peoples of the world. Today, we welcome you to this international forum. On the date that we are commemorating today, it is the birth of our enormous Alexandra Kollontai. So from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, from revolutionary Venezuela, we send you Chavista hugs, and from all women, from the Instituto Simón Bolívar, its president, and the whole team that is with us here today. We'd like to say that from the Simón Bolívar Institute, we embrace the cause of the struggle for women's emancipation, feminist revolution. And we understand that we are amidst a wave of feminism today, international feminism, and we need to accompany this from all latitudes, from all spaces. Women are demanding, increasingly demanding more equality, more equity. Women are struggling for survival in this system imposed by patriarchal capitalism. This is why it's so important today. Today is our last day of our feminist march, where we commemorate, the month where we commemorate the Day of Working Women, with this panel, with this forum from women all over the world, from all over the continents that today are with us, with a lot of love to say once again that working women all over the world, we are united in a single cause, and we, from the strength of our feminism, revolutionary feminism, we want to transform reality. Welcome, dear comrades. Welcome, dear Layan.
Thank you so much, Laura. My name is Layan, and I am with the International People's Assembly, and we're so excited to be here. The IPA, the International People's Assembly, is a network of people's organizations, social movements, political parties, and trade unions, and over 200 organizations, movements, and parties of the left on all the continents of the world participate in the building processes of internationalism and unity in this project, anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, ecology, and feminism. We also work together and build collective projects of mobilization, political education, research, and media for the battle of the ideas. So for this reason, we are so excited to join with Simón Bolívar Institute as women of the IPA to celebrate the birthday of Alexandra Kollontai. There's so much we could say about Kollontai's life. It was such a rich life of concrete revolutionary struggle, and also of personal, political, and theoretical development. And of course, we don't have time to go into it in detail, but I do encourage everybody who is tuning in to look for her autobiography, the selections of which are posted online. And there's also many selections of her theoretical, analytical, and fictional writings that you can find. She was one of the many Bolshevik women who were at the front of building a new revolutionary reality. So why do we remember her in particular? And what makes her relevant, not just to the context of Russia, but to the anti-patriarchal struggle around the world? Kollontai was one of the leaders and one of the first to take on organizing women workers and theorizing what that means, not just doing the organizing, but also building a theory of socialist feminism. She was concerned precisely with the question of full human emancipation, and not just political or social or personal emancipation, but emancipation in its entirety, and also for women in the revolutionary process. The question that she concerned herself with for the majority of her life was, how do we create a world in which women are full, free, and active human beings in the personal, political, and societal spheres of life? She was also one of the leaders who organized the first International Working Women's Day that was held in Russia in 1913, 5 years before the historic March 8, 1917, when women workers and peasants rose up in great masses and triggered the October Revolution. And this history has become an international history and an international day for all of us for collective action. Kollontai was one of many, but she left us with a clear vision and a clear understanding that women's emancipation can only be fully realized once the working class is liberated from the chains of capitalism and from the imperialist system. And this is an understanding that guides our struggle today as well, and connects the struggle of anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist women that are on many different contexts across the world. So there's no better way to celebrate the birthday of Kollontai than to have an exchange with amazing women leaders from across the world. So we want to get right into it. I'm going to start by presenting Puleng Paka. Puleng Paka is a leader in the South African Federation of Trade Unions. She is the interim provincial chair. She also is the regional chairperson of the National Union of Metal Workers, South Africa. She also works at Eskom, and she is a shop steward in this work. Puleng, I will also let you introduce yourself in more detail, and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, comrades, and from my side, good afternoon. It's 16 hours in South Africa. Yes, as Leanne was introducing me, I am a leader, a shop steward, and also a mother, a leader in different spheres, from the Federation as a provincial chairperson of the Federation called SAFTU, and a regional chairperson of the Metal Workers Union called NUMSA. And I also work in the energy sector as a customer service officer in ESCOM. So I also do work with kids and also with women within the trade union, as on a daily basis, we do represent workers that has cases in the workplace. So this is what we are doing. Thank you. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you so much, Puleng. It would be great to hear from you a little bit the context of women in your area of work and struggle, and what are the conditions that women are facing today?
Okay, I thought it was only the introduction, but let me go also. One, as we all know that South Africa, we are actually not only challenged with COVID, we are also challenged with gender-based violence, which on a daily basis, women and children are killed in different areas. And this is the country that it's full of squalors, or some would say shacks, or informal settlement, where you do find workers that needs to work in the CBD or in the metropolis, where they would need a nearer place to stay. That's where you would find informal settlement. Secondly, on the challenges that are facing women, you'd still have children that are married in exchange of, if the family is very poor, you'd find the family giving out their child that is less than 16 years of age, that are still in school, that will be sold to a very old man to marry them in exchange of giving them something to eat or something to keep them alive, that will be a wealthy man, but the man will be old, which we normally would call is a statutory rape. We still find ourselves being faced with challenges that are political challenges, where you still struggle to find the representation of women in different spheres, that those that are representing, it's less than 20% of the women in that same organization. And the same, most of the organizations that we would work, unfortunately, I would say where I am, we have a 50% representation, but you go to different regions, you still find women being not even represented. Some you'd find 20% of representation. So we are still fighting for that, to make sure that working women are able to can be in leadership roles. Working women are able to be shop stewards, to continue to represent workers. You still find challenges in sexual harassment in workplaces, where you would also have to represent those women that are challenged, which is a very lengthy issues that are actually not taking, it takes a toll on one, that those are cases that takes longer than more than a year to represent the same work. And I would say today, the union was supporting one of our comrades that was burned with chemical, Comrade Ponso, that her husband tried to kill her. These are one of the examples of gender-based violence that she managed to run away, and the chemicals did not. But I can tell you she was badly burned. She stayed over 3 months in hospital. And today it's also her case that it's dragging more than 5 years, that it's still going to court. And the culprit is today wanted to appeal and get a lesser sentence. So those are the challenges that we are actually trying to assist. And we are also trying as NUMSA to build women that are coming, young ones that are coming to start taking this women struggle into cognizance, women struggle as they are in universities, others, they don't even see the light of the university. These are challenges that we see on a daily basis, and we are actually supporting those women internationally, those that are in solidarity with us, and we are also in solidarity with them. And as you correctly highlighted the birth of Alexander, it says to us, these are the women that we look up to say, even if when we fall down, we are able to can stand up and say, these were women that were taking the struggle upon themselves, and we are here as now the different layer of leadership to take the struggle in different spheres to go forward. I will stop there. If there's anything that I would want to add, as the speakers would be saying, but I would say, as South Africa, we are still challenged. We still are challenged with mental issues that women, as much as we were on the lockdown, these challenges came at the rife that we were challenged, that those that were working, we were faced with retrenchment. And as we go forth with retrenchments that are in face of us as working women, the vaccine became mandatory when the president did not even say the vaccine is mandatory. So if the 80% of the workforce in the companies where you are working in are vaccinated, then you are forced. We do have members that were dismissed in the Gautrain. It's a train company that they refused to be vaccinated based on their health challenges, and they were dismissed. So these are the campaigns that we are taking forth. These are the challenges that we need to, on a daily basis, to represent workers that are less fortunate, and mostly you'd find women being part of those challenges that we are facing. Thank you, Leah.
Muchísimas gracias a ti, querida hermana Pulen.
So much, Puleng, all our support and solidarity for you and the struggle of women in Africa. We're here to welcome another lovely comrade who is part of the coordination team of the International Assembly of Peoples. She's a psychologist. She's a coordinator of international process of solidarity. She's a worker and part of the equipment of Martin Luther King. She's part of the international collective and she's part of the Institute of Philosophy of Cuba. She also works in Claxo in studies of Marxism and resistance, and from Venezuela and all the continents that are here today, we send you a big greeting. Long live Cuba and welcome, Janiska. Thank you, thank you. It's such an amazing initiative to have this encounter hosted by the Institute of Simón Bolívar and the Assembly in a moment in which the capitalism it's not aligned to democracy, with a lot of intensity and contradictions and an increase of violence that it's related to women all the time. And it's very important that it's today, because we follow the example of a woman that prioritize the organizations of women to liberate the society as a whole. This is a debate that is very interesting because each region here today can take into account this historical expression, where we're coming from. We shouldn't bring between the tension between the emancipation without thinking where we're coming from. In the case of Caribbean, the process of emancipation were for women in the second part of the century, because our peoples had to go through terrible, brutal slavery processes, and we had to face the fights for independency, and all the struggles of emancipation were aligned to decolonization processes as well. And as we were saying, there are women in our continents that were the ones who were put their lives, their homes, their strength in the battlefield, their images of women, their children on the service to the nation, and they were punished in a double way. They were tortured because they had the courage to face the power of men, so they were double punished. And in Cuba, we had a lot of women that contributed to the process of emancipation. But one of them that maybe is not so known, Ana Betancourt, when after 5 months that the independence wars have started, she told the men that were reunited in the assembly that it was okay to work for the emancipation of the slaves, and to work for the emancipation for the origin of class, talking about all the poverty, and because there were so many Black people and mixed people. But it was time to think about women's emancipation. And she did that at the beginning of the independence war. So we cannot think about the freedom of a society that would be followed by revolution and so on, and then think about how certain actors are emancipated. It's a building process that goes aligned, hand to hand, with the beginning of independent Cuba. Each country might have its history and how they were building the popular processes. There's a topic that is very important in this debate on emancipation, that is which organizational forms and how to understand the support to the mass struggle. We have to analyze how we as women, when Lenin tells them that they're not a priority, and the revolution will create conditions for the liberation of all subjects. But there are topics like marriage and sexuality that should be issues that will derive of these processes. But the women said there are topics that that are very important to deal with. They both realize that against a bourgeois society, and in order to build a new way of life, we cannot do it with the emancipation of women. So this is a consensus. We have all the movements for the rights of women. These processes are no lineal. We're never emancipated forever. Sometimes we can go back. So, and these processes don't lack contradictions. And the agreement on how we disarticulate a process, how do we build a process of emancipation? It's related to the political practice of the struggle of women against the patriarchy, colonizer, imperialist. It's very important to acknowledge the value and the political support of the women's parties and movements. It's very important to think about the organizational practice, the role of territoriality of politics. When politics is centralized, when it's focused on the state of power, how women have been building with so many challenges, the territoriality of the processes of mobilization. Women are organized to survive, to take care, to feed. They are organized. So how can we recover all this experience? I think these are inputs that can help us rethink, what does emancipation mean? How do we overcome capitalism? How do we destroy the logic of capitalism in our daily lives? There are certain problems that we should think about for this topic. I'm going to talk about Cuba at the end, but these are problems that are common problems in relation to the emancipation. And a fundamental problem is poverty that has increased in our region and in the world in general, not only because of the pandemic, the one that was coming before, the one that was that derived from capitalism, in a poverty situation of subordination that is related to the present. So how can we think about the future in order to build an emancipation process? How do we organize women towards emancipation? This is related of how do we find the democratic element in a logic that is not democratic, because we have bonds and links in situations that are not emancipatory. So we need to see in a detail these situations. A problem we need to face is related to territorial issues. How do we make politics territorial? Not to represent women, but to contribute to make women politic subjects. We don't want to be mediators. We want to achieve women to be the protagonists. Otherwise, we cannot have a real emancipatory project. We have an understanding of work related to wealth, related to workforce. We don't understand work as related to the tasks of care, for example, that are important in women's lives. So we need to understand another way of the job comprehension, and to talk about the problems of Cuba, and then I finish. The dispute is cultural. We need to take care of our training processes. Although we want the liberation of the whole society, we have to take care of our identity and contribute to a process of formation that can strengthen the organizational culture, an organization that talks in a collective way of horizontal structures. These processes are not hidden, are assumed within the struggle of women. Of course, with a lot of challenges, we cannot think that women will have all solutions to what we're going through, but there's always a path that could be better used. And in Cuba, with the blocking, especially during the pandemic, during the whole history, we've been punished. They wanted us to pay for the courage of revolution. In the last years, it's been really worse. And it's very important what this women are living in this environment, because they've been building programs to guarantee rights and to guarantee the continuation of the revolution. We think that revolution means to keep on going, to go against all the contradictions that we live on a daily basis, and try to understand all this is very challenging in order to overcome these contradictions and these conditions. So I would like to highlight a plan made by Cuban women to in which recognizing the history of the revolution in terms of advancing of rights in women in Cuba, how to keep on working for women's rights in this scenario. We have a project of families that is focusing on the topics of emotional links and recognizes the oppressive logics of a system that are related to sexism, to patriarchy. We have this strategy reveals the violence on women,
and this is super important because relationships of violence are reproduced on the daily scenarios, and we need to discuss this permanently because they are linked to the production and reproduction of society as a whole, and not only to the lives of women, although they are violences that are suffered by women. And during the pandemic, because of the organization of women in Cuba and the organization of society as a whole, it was very visible that women were sustaining society. They created the vaccines. The scientists are mainly women. Of course, there were also men, but they were participating very much. They took care of the sick. They didn't let their families fall down. They waited in the queues, in the lines to obtain food. So they kept up the reproduction through care, through affection, life. And I believe that this has shown the capacity and the strength of women here. We have to also analyze how hard this was, the toll that this took, and the capacity that our society has in relation to rebuilding happiness, rebuilding pleasure, rebuilding well-being, rebuilding encounters again in a moment in where society as a whole, and particularly women, are very much injured, very much harmed, not only by the pandemic, but also by the blockade, of course. Just to close, I would like to say that in Cuba, we also have to think about a complete coherent system of care, because we are always putting the issue of care, which of course are absolutely necessary for emancipation, a bit in the relationship between family and state. And families are very much led by women. And the inequalities that are created within families are very invisibilized by the whole of society. And we lose there the power of the community, of what is popular organization, grassroots organization, in order to be solidarity instruments, care instruments, accompaniment of all this association tissue that has to be, so that this is not left only in the hands of the state or only in the hands of the family in a private circuit. There are many collectives, many women's collectives that are being born right now in the country. They are articulated in the Cuban Women's Federation. I want to mention two of them because you can find them on Telegram. These are ways that women have to be connected and to permanently establish a dialogue, even though we might live in different countries and different continents. One is called Cimarronas. It's on a Telegram channel. Women from different organizations in Cuba, but also in the region participate. And they share information, they share plans, they share programs. And another network is the Berta Cáceres network, which also has a feminist agenda. It works with networks of cooperations led by women. And these spaces, such as the Cuban chapter of the Women's March and the Federation of Cuban Women that articulates as a broad space, women in Cuba, I believe that these two spaces are achieving a dynamization of the society, of the discussions and debates on the situation of women in Cuba, and also our duty as women who aspire to build an emancipating society. We aspire to build socialism from the power of the people, from the power of workers, and understanding workers as a very broad definition. And those of us who we have, the certainty that under capitalist logic, dreams and meaning of an emancipated society cannot be built under capitalism. So I'm going to leave it here. I thank you very much. Thank you very much for this invitation. And in Cuba, we're always willing to exchange our experiences with other experiences and other revolutionary processes all over the world. Thank you very much. Big fraternal hug.
Thank you so much, Yanisca, for your amazing contribution. It is always so important to learn from and struggle with and walk with the Cuban Revolutionary Project and the Cuban women leading it. So thank you very much, Yanisca. I want to introduce next Claudia de la Cruz from North America. Claudia is a popular educator, community organizer, and a theologian. Her political formation and organizing skills come from over 15 years of experience in the creation of political education and cultural spaces in the city of New York and across the United States. She has been committed to movement building and has actively participated in the creation of cultural and political projects and also physical spaces, particularly in the working class communities in New York. Claudia is part of a long tradition of radical organizing and solidarity work connected to Latin America and the Caribbean popular movements. She is the co-founder and co-executive director of the People's Forum in New York City. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Laura, for hosting this space. It's always hard to speak after Yanisca. She's so amazing. But I'll try. I want to thank also our comrades in the International People's Assembly and the Simón Bolívar Institute for putting this together. I think it's very important for us to celebrate the life and legacy of the great Bolshevik leader, Alexandra Kollontai, something that we should take on doing every day with our work. Kollontai's life work reminds us that the transformation of a working women's condition under capitalist society can only happen through a socialist revolution that transforms the entire socioeconomic and political system in which we exist, which is something that Janiska also mentioned. In a context where mainstream feminism is massively amplified and serves to advance capitalist and imperialist agendas, it is crucial that our movements link women's liberation to class struggle. If we aim to understand the roots of our oppression and fight towards our liberation, we must be able to make that connection. And so I'll share the state of women's struggle in the context of working class struggle in the United States. And as we all know, the US is the center of global capitalism and imperialism, and it maintains full domination globally through extreme violence and coercion. Biden just recently gifted the military a budget of $31 billion. I'll say that again, $31 billion, while the working class people in the United States continue to barely survive the impact of an economic, health, and housing crisis that has been in existence for years and which has deepened and escalated as a result of COVID. This action shows us where the priority lies. And the United States' priority is to save US capitalism through an increase of its imperialist offensive against the global South, and at the expense of the poor, both at home and abroad. When we talk about sanctions in Venezuela and other countries, sanctions and blockades, the blockade on Cuba, yes, the folks that are experiencing the harshest of the impact of these sanctions are working class people, just like the working class people in the United States, and they are particularly women and children. And so when we talk about the United States and its outward image, the United States wants to paint it as if there's democracy and there's peace and there's all these beautiful things, the land of golden honey. But the majority of the population in the United States, in whose name the US continues to justify global domination and war in all its forms, is facing a dramatic and inhumane deterioration of our material conditions. And we understand that our work against patriarchy towards the women's emancipation should be anti-imperialist. In the United States, over 140 million people, which is 43.5% of the national population, lives in poverty. And with COVID, this continues to increase. Poor and working class women in the United States, like women around the world, face double and triple burden of economic crisis, which is further intensified due to race and the citizenship status of these women. Regarding COVID, in terms of who has been mostly impacted and most severely, it is again indicated by gender, race, and citizenship status. In December 2020, our comrades at the Cairo Center released a report that said that the US economy lost 140,000 jobs, all held by women. 140,000 jobs were lost, and all these jobs were held by women. Women make up the majority of the low-wage workforce, which is Black, it's Latina, and is Asian women who are experiencing the highest rates of job loss. New conditions of social reproduction created by the pandemic also force women, who usually the primary caretakers of our families, whether or not also working out of the home, to turn fully to unpaid care work. If we're going to win the emancipation of women, all work against patriarchy must be anti-capitalist. Feminicide, which is something that is usually spoken about as if something that happens across the borders outside of the United States, is something that is very highly normalized and widespread in the United States, actually. Even though we don't talk about it and a lot of the violence goes unreported, the US is listed as the third most dangerous country in the world regarding sexual violence. Every 16 hours, there's a woman who is shot and killed by an intimate partner. And when we're talking about the bourgeois state and its response to it is basically to re-victimize those who have been victims of interpersonal violence. And so there's a very thin line that is blurred between the violence that we experience in our interpersonal relationships and the violence from the state. Actually, the police has one of the highest rates of domestic violence cases within their ranks. And when we're talking about social services, the social services that are provided that respond to that interpersonal violence do it in a very, the narrative is very much informed by NGO structures and analysis and systems of analysis of systematic problems. There is not an actual analysis of the overall state as also promoting this type of violence. And so, you know, as I think, as Alexandra Kollontai understood, there needs to be an aim for all social movements, particularly those of women, to be able to understand state violence as something that we need to address, and that the need for us to be able to gain control over the state through a socialist revolution. Another, and this is kind of like the last challenge that I'll share, another challenge that we're facing currently is within the reproductive justice movement in the United States. The reproductive justice that work that was advanced somewhat in many years is being digressed. Reproductive justice and healthcare is constantly under attack. Federal and state attacks on abortion services consistently appear in legislation, with 2 states severely limiting the time frame when abortion is allowed, essentially making it impossible. Most currently, the Senate failed to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, which would have cemented the right to abortion access for women. And what this means is that ultimately, throughout the United States, there have been restrictions that have been happening since last year, 2021, restrictions to abortion that will continue to spread throughout the United States, making it almost impossible for mostly working class women, because that's the key. It's mostly working class women who won't be able to take a flight to another country where they could access abortion, or cross state lines where they could access abortion, but making it impossible for working class women and poor women to be able to have access to abortion or family planning services. And it becomes even worse when you're talking about the trans, non-gender conforming folks. And so these are things to take into consideration. I mention all of these things as challenges that are being faced not only by women, but that are also of high impact to the working class. And we need to be able to frame it as such, because it's not an issue of women, it's a human rights issue, and it's a class issue, right? And I mentioned these, again, for us to be able to have an understanding of what the larger state of struggle is in the United States. And as I mentioned this, the very hopeful element is that working women, poor women, are heavily engaged in the forefront of all these struggles. All the struggles that impact the working class as a whole, women are at the forefront and at the center of these struggles. And as Janiska mentioned, women have historically been leading community strategies of survival that are accumulated lessons for us to be able to advance this struggle, and also to create some sort of proposal, because we need that. We need, in our movements, we need to be able to propose a radical imagination for the future, so that there is hope for our people to be able to fight. There are many lessons there. And while there has been a deepening of an economic, social, political crisis as a result of 3 years of a pandemic, the working class is becoming more and more aware of the inability of the bourgeois state to respond to our material needs. And that's an opening, that's an opportunity for our social movements. This moment is a historic one for social movements and the deepening of class consciousness, and provides an orientation that is anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, and anti-patriarchal. Women are in the lead of building this alternative. The only hope for our planet and humanity is what we all call socialism. And so we should and must continue to advance our struggles towards winning Long live Alexandra Kollontai, long live Chavez, and long live all the revolutionary processes of the world and the women who lead them.
Muchísimas gracias, querida Claudia. Siempre es un gusto.
Thank you so much, Claudia. It's so nice to hear you all the time. All the strength and all the solidarity for all the women, where's the center of the imperialist world. Now we're going to introduce as Gatasha, who's part of the Popular Party of Palestine. She's the president of the Collective Union of the Women of Palestine. She's member of the Central Council of Palestine Women. Welcome, dear sister, and long live free Palestine.
Thank you, comrade. Greetings, comrades. I would like to note I am also a member of the political office of the Popular Front in Palestine. Yes, I would like to welcome you for this initiative made by Simon Bolivar and the IPA. First of all, I would like to seize the opportunity to celebrate the 8th of March day. And I would like to express that it is a day filled with struggles. Tyranny, tyrannical forces are trying to devoid this day of its struggle and syndical meaning and make it just a day of celebration. No, we stress the fact that this is a day for a struggle of women, working women, and internationalism. When we talk about women issues, they are not separate from the general issues and the struggle that we engage in, the class struggle and social struggle in general. Women are part of the people's movements, and the liberation of women, emancipation of women can only happen if people are emancipated, and vice versa. Without the emancipation of women, there will never be emancipation of people. I would like, first of all, to give you an overview on the Arab and Maghreb region. This is a region that it is being targeted by the American imperialism, and the American imperialism is lured by the wealth and riches in this region. The Arab and Maghreb region has different situations. There are conflicts and wars existing in multiple countries in this region, and they are all orchestrated by the American imperialism in Libya, Iraq, Syria, Yemen. There are also some countries that witnessed movements and revolutions 10 years ago, like Tunisia, Egypt, Sudan, Morocco. And in the past 10 years, we've seen many popular movements happening in these countries. Of course, we shouldn't forget Palestine. Palestine, which is still occupied for many decades. And the occupation has created many burdens on the people of Palestine. This is the status in the Arab and Maghreb region. And this situation affects people, and especially the people of these countries, and especially women in the region. The Arab movements and revolutions were led by many prominent women, and women are still part of those revolutionary movements. And even when we've seen counter revolutions that are fueled by by the world imperialism forces like the USA, and we've seen the counter revolutions being orchestrated by the Muslim Brotherhoods and the military that is seizing the regime and the ruling of the countries. So these imperial systems do such manipulation work in order to stay in control of the region and to control the people, and especially women. If we talk about politics post the revolutions, um, in the Arab and Maghreb region, we have seen a huge level of recession, and especially at the political activism level. In Tunisia, the rights of women have receded. In the Arab world, we always give Tunisian women and rights of Tunisian women as an example, because women have achieved much in Tunisia at the human rights level, at the working class level, and also at the individual liberties and laws that safeguard these rights for women, and especially in Tunisia. But in Tunisia now, we're seeing a regression in women representation in politics. I can give you an example here. In the parliament, women representation in the Tunisian parliament was 28%, but now it is 24%. And due to the political situation in Tunisia, we've seen an increase in poverty and unemployment amongst women, especially. Unemployed women rates increased exponentially in Tunisia and in Arab and Maghreb region countries also. Also in Morocco, there is a movement made by teachers and temp teachers that are being oppressed. The Moroccan authorities are arresting women teachers and throwing them in prisons, and thus these countries do not see any development under these political conditions. Iraq also, that was a target of the imperialist greed, and regardless of the regime that existed in Iraq, the invasion, the American invasion of Iraq is unjustified and is illegitimate. Iraq was destroyed due to this invasion. And who paid the price? It's the people, and especially women in Iraq. Many examples can be provided at the level of the different countries. Studies and research papers have been developed in this respect and show the percentages of regression in the different levels, being the political, be it the economic, be it the social, and the increase of violence and poverty in these countries. Since I am limited by time, I cannot provide much of the details related to these statistics and numbers, but I can mention what is happening in Palestine. And by the way, in Palestine, there is a dual struggle. There is a national struggle in order to deter the occupation, but also there is the democratic human rights struggle within the country. In Palestine, 35 women prisoners are incarcerated by the occupation forces. They are suffering from different diseases. They are not provided with the minimum rights, and they are deprived of health care. They are mothers. These are mothers who have a life, and the children are deprived from the tenderness and kindness of their mothers. Here, uh, there is also many of the um, difficult situations that women are faced with in Palestine are due to the deprivation that the occupation forces is doing in Palestine, or the deprivation effort deployed by the occupation forces in Palestine. In Palestine, we're seeing absolute poverty rates increase amongst women in the light of the absence of fair and equitable rights and laws um, for women. And this is done by the Palestinian authorities with respect to the laws, be it the laws promulgated by the Palestinian authorities or imposed by the occupation forces, are also restricting the rights of women. And there is an important role that women play in the struggles against this. Now in Palestine, we have a movement that it is working towards the change of the personal status law in Palestine, that it is um, 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 being rejected by women. These laws are um, driven by religious forces, but they undermine the human rights and struggle and class struggle of women. This is why there is this movement that wants to amend these unfair and inequitable laws that treat unjustly women. So there lies the true militancy of women in order to change this legal system, not only in Palestine, but also in the different Arab Maghreb countries. I also should not forget to talk about Egypt. After the revolution in Egypt, and as you all know, the Muslim Brotherhood reached the regime, and then the military seized the regime. And both of these are oppressing women. Women are now under house arrest, being imprisoned, and deprived from traveling. But women continue to engage in popular struggles in the Arab and Maghreb region. These struggles might differ in the momentum between countries, but we have common points that we are trying to achieve. Another point that women are struggling for in the Arab Maghreb region is education, and especially curricula. Maybe education has two folds. There is the high cost of education and accessing education, and another part which is related to the curricula that are still unable to achieve the minimum justice between gender and equality between gender. I should not also forget Sudan. Sudan the Sudanese Revolution is being attacked now and seized by the military, supported by the American imperialism. And thus, women in Sudan are in the forefront of the struggle and the battle to protect the Sudanese revolution. Women are being targeted, killed, and arrested in Sudan. However, they remain in the forefront of the struggle, and they claim and call for the achievement of all the revolution objectives. This is just a small overview on the women's struggles in the Arab Maghreb region countries. There are many details, but time, I believe, is not sufficient to cover them all. In the 3 past years, COVID-19 had its toll on the countries. This is an international pandemic, yes, but it affected heavily the Arab Maghreb region. The pandemic has shown the fragility of the regimes and political systems in the Arab and Maghreb country, and that these regimes are not able to respond to the simplest needs of their people. The pandemic increased the fragility and poverty of women because we've seen that the women have been laid off from their jobs, and more women have been laid off compared to men, and the rates of unemployment amongst women has risen exponentially. Women usually engage in fragile employment, but with the COVID, they were deprived even from the fragile employment they have, and the poverty rates has increased amongst women due to that. Now, the war, Ukrainian-Russian war, will exacerbate the situation. We are observing the war, and we are concerned about the results and repercussions of this war and its impact on the Arab and Maghreb region in particular, and the world in general. And women in all wars and conflicts and counter-revolutions are the first to be sacrificed. They are the first to pay the price. They are already oppressed, and these war and conflict conditions increase the oppression and persecution of women. And in spite of this situation in the Arab Maghreb region, women are still adamant on the struggle, on engaging in social struggles to achieve our convictions. And we are convinced that the problems of the people and the problems of women can only be resolved through the establishment of socialist regimes that ensure social justice. And these socialist regimes are what we aspire for, and we are struggling to achieve that. Pending the achievement of this objective, we will continue our struggles, our tactical militancy, and the provision of alternatives in order to achieve this ultimate objective. We need convergence of efforts from all socialist forces. We need an international solidarity, either amongst the region or at the international level. And hopefully we will triumph in finally. And we say, if we cannot achieve something with struggle, we need to increase our struggle so that we achieve it. Thank you very much. And sorry for keeping talking for long and overlooking some things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Afaf, for this amazing analysis and contribution. We have to understand the conditions in the Arab Maghreb region so we can develop our analysis of anti-imperialist struggle. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to next introduce our comrade from Europe, Lucia Amorosi. Lucia is a member of the Italian leftist political movement, Potere il Popolo. She is also a feminist activist and is committed to intersectional and popular feminisms. Welcome, Lucia. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all, comrades. It's really an honor to be here. And especially after the inspiring speeches I've heard till now. So really, thank you. Yes, I am a member of the leftist political movement Potere al Popolo, and I am also a member of the Italian feminist movement Non Una di Meno, which is the Italian branch of Ni Una Menos. And I am a researcher on gender and labor studies. So I started giving you an overview of what happened, and it's still happening in Italy during these pandemic times. Basically, COVID-19 showed contradictions already existing in our country, as happening in other countries, as I heard until now. And first of all, it emerged that women are still invisible workers because they are employed in social reproduction jobs, in essential works that were recognized as essentials during the pandemic, but remained invisible without any kind of economic or social or political support. And the pandemic showed the centrality, the social relevance of social reproduction. So it is still considered as something invisible. For instance, in Italy, our welfare system is based on family, is a familistic welfare system. So relies on the reproductive labor, on the domestic labor of women. Being that Italian women carry on these reproductive tasks for free, of course, if they are poor women from lower class, or if they are migrant women, carry on the task outsourced from Italian middle class women. And the pandemic also showed another aspect, like the qualitative feminization of labor, because women were the 98% of people losing their jobs during the lockdown. And even if in Italy during the lockdown there was the block of layoffs, but the problem is that women are employed in atypical jobs, so with less guaranteed contracts, part-time, temporary work contracts, and so they lose their job, and we are still losing our jobs. So pandemics show the crucial role of women in our economy, especially in the reproduction activities, but it also clearly shows the increase in domestic violence. Before the pandemic, one woman was killed in 3 days in Italy, and the situation worsened during the lockdown, of course, and the political stance towards the issues of femicides is still based on this idea of women being a victim and single men having some mental problem, being a fool, without focusing the structural dimension of gender violence, which is affecting our society. Then the other problem is the one of abortion, because we have the formal right to abortion in Italy, but then when it translates into practice is another reality because of the strong role of the Catholic Church in our country, and the problem of conscientious objections, like doctors that refuse to do abortions because of some ethic of moral issues, but only in the public healthcare, because if you go to the private center, the same doctors make abortion if you have the money to pay. So it's something impacting on poor women, working class women, while middle and high class women can pay for private abortion. So it's a great contradiction. And COVID, of course, worsened also this reality because of public health care being blocked by COVID emergency, and so other health issues became secondary, and abortions was among them. Then when we were starting to planning the economic recovery of Italy after the lockdown, the war came out. And now the Italian government is debating about the increase of a military budget. We as Potere al Popolo are strongly against this idea, the idea to increase the military budget, because we want money be spent on social services, on the attempt to overcome the familism of the welfare in Italy, to free Italian women from their, and the migrant women from the care and domestic work responsibilities. So we want that this money will be spent in other ways, not to fuel this war. And we are trying to build also a European network against, an European movement against this war. We have the first assembly next Sunday, together with other leftist movements and parties in Europe. So basically, it is not a good time for women, but as other comrades already said, women are the real alternative, because we now need another view of the world, another perspective centered on interdependence rather than assumed autonomy of subjects, centered on care, centered on solidarity, centered on alliances with the most marginalized groups. We need this, and women, as others said before, have this historical heritage of being in charge of the communities. We need communities, not individualism. This is what we need now. So how to achieve this alternative? Feminism is essential, but we need a popular feminism. We should put intersectionality into practice. Intersectionality could not be an academic label or abstract concept, because it's the reality that the poor women, working women, live every day. And so this should be the starting point. This means, of course, building alliances. So how to find reliable allies? Reliable allies are the ones that are on the same side in your struggles. So alliances with students, with younger people, who are more aware of the core role of overcoming gender inequalities, but also climate justice. It's essential to involve also these energies, especially in a country like Italy, which is aging countries, and we really need to renew the strength of our struggles, but also building alliances with migrants, with non-white women, with popular women, with working women. And this is what we as Potere al Popolo are trying to do in our everyday activities. And this is essential. I think that living in Italy, what is essential here from the European perspective is to struggle against this liberal feminism idea, because it's every day here, politicians, media, films talk about feminism, about gender equality, but it is not in the right way. In the right way, I mean, of course, in a way that pave the way to revolution, to a real change of the system. Liberal feminism, which is really central in our society, is only the reproduction of the same system based on a sign for some forms of pinkwashing. And it is totally against what we really need now. So what we need is to build these alliances starting from below, starting from political practice. And exactly for this, moment like this one, moment of real internationalism, of solidarity among people, among working class, are essential. The class focus on intersectionality is crucial, because if not, we can only rely on this liberal feminism, which is part of the problem, surely not the solution. So thank you again for this incredible opportunity to stay here and change ideas and practices with you.
Muchísimas gracias, querida hermana Lucía. Gracias por ese.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Thank you very much for offering this essential map, and especially for putting at the center revolutionary feminism. Revolutionary feminism is under dispute. It is an international dispute, and from the understanding of revolutionary feminism, we need to move forward together. Thank you very much for your intervention. Now we're going to welcome a comrade who is part of what we are constructing, building today in our revolutionary Venezuela. She is a young woman who occupies an important, responsible role in the Vice Ministry for Women's Productive Development. Her name is Perdomo. She has a degree in political science. From the Bolivarian University of Venezuela. She was elected as council in her hometown municipality, and she occupied also in the municipality a political role. She's also been working in the National Youth Institute, and she has been manager of the Women's Development Bank. Welcome, Ismaili, comrade, that today is Vice Minister in the Ministry for Women and Equality in Venezuela. She's part of the Venezuelan government. Greetings, greetings to all of you. Comrades, sisters, I would like to thank the Simón Bolívar Institute and the International People's Assembly for the invitation, for inviting our ministry to this space. These spaces always seek to promote discussion about the incorporation of women into all realms of life in our society, from the different latitudes across the world. And so here I would like to greet you in the name of President Nicolás Maduro, in the name of the Minister Liva Guzmán, who's also president of the Women's Development Bank, president of the Feminist School of the South, and she's also president. So I would like to say hello to all the comrades who are here today, joining efforts for women's emancipation, for women's empowerment, all women who want to carry out their lives in the economic, political, social spheres, all the different layers of the spaces in which we develop our lives as human beings, but particularly as women with our own particular characteristics. Today is a very important day, March 31st. In the name of this great comrade, Alexandra Kollontai, we are here today reflecting on women's emancipation. Women's emancipation today, that is the name of this international forum. Maybe this was already mentioned before, but I would like to emphasize on one of the elements that Alexandra Kollontai highlighted, which is that that capital has placed a very heavy burden upon the shoulders of working women. It has relegated women to their roles in the domestic sphere. And this is one of the most important things since the arrival of different revolutions around the world. Women today in 2021, we are still discussing this topic. We have the founder of the women's ministry here, the space that was put forth by President Chavez. This is Maria Leon, Comrade Maria Leon. There are no spaces like this one that promote debates about retribution, economic compensation or retribution for women who work at home. This should be paid work. This is work that generates value. Taking care of kids, cleaning, ironing, taking care of the home, doing all of this domestic work generates value. And it generates value because it has a repercussion upon the workers who are in factories. Speaking in the terms Alexandra Kollontai used to speak of, all these women who are part of our feminist struggle. How can we do then in the framework of an international agenda to promote this debate in all spaces, but not only promoting the debate, we have to take concrete steps. We have to continue developing concrete steps to achieve the objectives that we state, among them women's empowerment and women's emancipation. I also want to highlight a couple of other things that she mentions. That is the struggle for socialism and women's emancipation is not separate, is not an individual, it's the same struggle. Chavez, our commander Chavez, said that without women's true liberation, there will be no full liberation of peoples, and peoples are made up of men and women. Peoples, inasmuch men and women are generating their conditions, but they are also owners of their lives. So this is how peoples can be free if they are true, if they own their lives completely. So we have to stop perpetuating a system that promotes and allows the richness that is made by the majority of the people to be kept in the pockets of a very small amount of people. This is a wonderful space. This is a space that I feel should be promoted all over different spheres. We need to continue meeting each other because this has to do with international struggle. Chavez, we have many comrades, male comrades here who are very much committed to feminist struggle because Chavez, as Chavez said, if we cannot have true liberation, we cannot have emancipation if we don't have women's emancipation. Our founding father, Simón Bolívar, was also a feminist. He believed and he actually embodied the principles of feminists. He said, society is made up of men and women, and if we want to build the new man and the new women, we have to understand this. In Venezuela, we have this founding father, along with many other men and women, that set the ground for the arrival of Chavez commander in the 90s to take over the struggle of this people. Today, President Maduro continues this historic line that has led us to maintain revolution in Venezuela. And today we are in 2022, and President Nicolás Maduro installed the Women's Congress, and he told us, all the comrades, because we are incorporating all Venezuelan women, this is not an isolated struggle. It's all of us must struggle together. Maduro summoned us to a big debate. He said, women, I expect your contributions. I expect your instructions. Can you imagine the commitment of Maduro with Bolivarian feminism? I cannot hear the sound anymore. Is everybody?
I think there must have been a connection problem, an internet problem. Maybe we can move forward in the program. She's back. She's back. We hear you. We are live here. As I was saying, the President Nicolás Maduro installed the Congress of Women, and he summoned all women to create debate, to create an agenda of action for next year's to move forward towards the emancipation of women. I would like to tell you that Venezuela is going through a process that is subjected to different countries of the world that are opting for the people's determination. Therefore, we are living some restrictive conditions that have affected women's in particular. Being women in Venezuela are the ones who have maintained the revolution. More than the 70% of our whole party is formed by women, but a very high level, above 50% of the organization of the government and the parties are women. UNESCO has recognized that we are the country with the more number of scientific women. And it's not by chance that these restrictive unilateral measures imposed by the United States and other allies are directed straight to women, since our main problem is the lack of food and the lack of medicine. And the main concern, the person who is concerned about well-being in Venezuelan homes are women. So women are the ones who are in charge of finding and taking care of the situation, but also women were the ones who were struggling against these restrictive measurements. And we designed a textile line, hygiene products, home products, and that's why we could face together as one single people unified all these measurements that have been increasing, but with the conduction, the direction of a leader that is our President Maduro. So we've been able to go through all these coercive measurements. At the beginning, the mask was that that in very short time, the government realized and the people realized that all these measurements were directed to all the people. And some people decided to go into another borders, and we leave a xenophobic wave, among them women that are that suffer gender violence. As you know, we've been able to face this situation, but there's a truth that we cannot deny, that we need to say today, that only together with an international agenda, with international solidarity, with diplomacy, and respecting self-determination of peoples is that we can overcome the situation. I would like to also say that in our revolution, we've had very important advances. We have a National Institute of Women that deals with the protection of our comrades. We've developed all sorts of policies that are related to health, a life free of violence, legal assistance. We are designing a line of work that the president has mentioned as justice of gender. And we've also created with Chavez the development bank of women that have offered financial loans and help to women to create conditions and incorporate themselves to the economic system of Venezuela. All the policies of equality, of participation in every aspect of our country. And we created the School of the South, a feminist school of the South, that is looking to take care the transversality of the public policies. And something that Alexandra used to mention in her time is how do we form each other? How we train to get the emancipation? We can talk about the issues, but if there's no training that warranties that the women who are participating start to create conscious processes of class, will be incorporating women into capitalism. We don't want women to reproduce the capitalist system. We want women to get incorporated and transforms the ways in which nowadays wealth is distributed in the world. We're going to achieve this with a public policy directed to train women in terms of political and ideological issues. We don't want something that will come in a long term, but the sound's been cut again, unfortunately. Hello? I don't know if you can hear me now. I'm sorry. I will finish shortly. So we have an organic law of rights to women free of violence that is being reformed so that we can understand that we are not linear. Our reality is not linear. Since we are in a revolution, we need to adapt ourselves. While peoples are moving forward, the tools that are being used need to be adapted as well. Our commitment is undeniable. Our commitment to keep on moving forward to empowerment and women's emancipation. Our commitment as government. We know that we have very difficult challenges that we need to move forward to, some challenges that other countries have had already, and they've developed public policies that can give us an example towards the emancipation of women, the self-determination as women. And those challenges are part of the Venezuelan Women's Congress. So it's the woman who can decide how to do these things. As a challenge, we need to say that we have a National Assembly in which we have a very important part of women that are struggling so that we can use all the legal tools to work on the emancipation process. And I would like to highlight as well, since I'm only 27 years old and I have a very important work to do in the government, and it's been Chavez and Maduro who called upon the youth, and we are making the same call to all the feminist organizations. Our young women, 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, they need to understand the feminist struggle. That is not a women's struggle, it's a women and men of the working class struggle that are moving forward to be liberated as a people that want to overcome. They believe in the living, as Chavez used to say. And a challenge we've assumed since the revolution started is to face inequalities wherever they emerge. And that's why all the different public policies have allowed us, for example, that a very important index that is studied internationally, the land possession. Venezuela is above the middle in comparison to other countries. 33% of lands in Venezuela are under the hands of women. So but we don't stay there. We don't stay with that number. We keep on working to move forward constantly. It's our commitment as a government. Since the rural population in Venezuela is made of the 52% by women. I would like to tell you as well that you can count on the Bolivarian government, on the Bolivarian revolution, all its movements. You can count on the support of Venezuela to keep on defining the feminist struggle towards the goals we have in mind, that is the well-being of and the well-living of all of us. All these goals will be fulfilled if we can do it together. We need to internationalize the struggle, and Chavez and Maduro have assumed an action agenda that has allowed us to be able to face the worst imperialism we've ever seen in our history, which is North American imperialism. I repeat, we can only do it together. You can count on Venezuela and all the comrades and the government that we are determined to commit to the struggle of feminism. Long live Venezuela and the peoples of the world.
Thank you so much, dear for sharing this very inspiring contribution and for accompanying us in this international exchange. So important to have you with us here today, because we have so much to learn from all of the women who are leading and building the Bolivarian Revolutionary Project, and not just to learn, but also to join and to defend the revolutionary project against all of the imperialist aggressions that are happening today. So thank you so much for being here. Next, I would like to introduce Marcia Moreno. Marcia is a social communicator. She has held very different responsibilities in national media and different institutions and political teams, and she's developed consultancies and campaigns. She is a militant of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. She is a feminist activist. She is dedicated to building collective spaces for the articulation of women. And that's where the initiative of the popular feminist platform Todas Anzoátegui, now Todas Venezuela, stands out very prominently. She is also the creator and promoter of the Communal Centers for Women project, together with all the brave women of the communal councils and communes of Anzoátegui, and of strengthening Venezuelan popular feminism. She was the regional director of the Ministry of Women and Gender Equality from September 2020 to December 2021. And she is a member of the coordinating team of the Diploma in Gender Justice in Addressing Violence. Thank you so much, Marcia, for being here. Welcome.
Saludos para todas. Gracias a ustedes.
Greetings to everybody. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to show the advances of Venezuela and how Latin America is walking towards popular feminism. Our vice minister was talking before me, extraordinary, talking about all the advances Venezuela has had and how we are going towards the consolidation of the feminism struggle. This struggle is of all the movements, all the popular movements that we've had within our country. And the first thing I would like to clarify here is that we, women from Venezuela, are struggling for emancipation. We do not submit against any American power or imperialist power, and we will continue with our project. Our project is holding not only women in terms of gender equality, but also in terms of class inequality, which means that this feminist popular holds the struggle of our people, all of us, todas is the name of our organization. We all are workers, those who have a salary and those who work as well but do not have a salary. In Latin America, we have this inequality that has been increased during the pandemic, during the 2020. So women have been burdened with homework, and women who have lost their jobs and their economic stability, not only here in Latin America. I was listening to the Italian comrade that was saying that in Italy, they've been through the same situation. So the pandemic has increased women's suffering, and also having our women inside the houses and increasing the sex violence. So in Latin America, we have a big dispute against hegemony and anti-patriarchal struggle. So we are mobilizing ourselves against the criminal bloc in the case of Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua, that it's affecting us in the same way. And how are we agreeing to fight against all this? Well, here's where we find all the challenges that popular feminism deals with. We need to start by the building that we are doing from a country that is in resistance, in a country that is supporting women in their struggle with a communal organization. How do we build this communal organization? From our sectors, with the building and the mechanisms such as the communal councils that are a creation of the commander and President Hugo Chavez. At that moment, it allowed us to organize ourselves territorially. It's wonderful that we created these management committees that are related to women's issues. This committee allow us to create structures, to create platforms so that women in their own territories can work on their own goals of struggle. After we've done the committee of gender equality. How do we do to crystallize this? Well, in Venezuela, where Bolivarian revolution has gone along and supported initiatives that are, for example, the creation of communal centers of women. It's a space of emancipation in which all women can participate to get to know not only our issues, but also to have a common struggle spaces. What are these centers? Places where the public policy is centralized, and we have a space for training. In a women's center, we can get together to talk about our issues. We can talk about our rights of reproduction. We can focus on the right of a life free of violence, because we have the advocacies of communal women. It's a woman that helps and supports another woman when there is a case of gender violence in her neighborhood, in her house, and she makes a follow-up of the case so that the steps of gender justice are fulfilled. So we want that in every center we will have advocates that will be helping the women, but also in the centers we also have humanized birth promoters that will be working along with women, that and they go in the whole sector so that they can make company to these women, and also to make a survey of the women that are in a fertile age so that they can create better planning. And the idea is to make company of our women, of our popular classes, so that we can understand that we own our own bodies and that we can plan when or not we want to be pregnant, when or not we want to have sexual relationships, when we want to have a life with a couple. And in these centers, we also have spaces for the social reproductive articulation of these women among their societies. The pandemic has allowed us to create amazing things in key moments when it was a very hard moment for us, like in 2018, 2019, 2017, and the pandemic allowed us to discover the potentiality of women in our communities in order to move forward. They make us get out of our houses and understand that we can be trained in different kind of occupations, not only to move forward and take care of our families, but also the community as a whole. So these communities are connected through these communal centers and committees that have been created. So each of our spaces creates this articulation in order to make links and to exchange things and to have a different kind of economy among our states and municipalities. Today, Venezuela has 25 centers of women, 20 in the state Aswate, where the project started, and 5 in the karaoke state who have come to see how the experience works. And this is a demonstration of communal feminism, and we want it to grow. We want it to be known at a global level. We think that Venezuela is showing the communal feminism and that we can create big things, not only in the communal centers of women, but also our popular feminism can organize, and this is one of our proposals, it can organize the creation of brigades that can work along with our women, can support our women in the struggle against gender-based violence. Brigades that can support and defend our women among the legal system. In Venezuela, we have the public system that is, let's say, supporting the aggressor. So we need more spaces where women can help. I'm talking about female lawyers and advocates that can help women with the legal matters. So we are trying to create this training in gender justice. We started with a degree, a bachelor's degree, and we are going towards a master's degree. So we are creating this training so that our women can have PhD and specializations in gender justice. So I would like to add that communal popular feminism is imperialist, sorry. We struggle against any kind of imperialist condition. We have a commitment of solidarity that is extended to all Latin American women and women in the world. And we want to build examples of struggle that will be an example so that all kinds of imperialism can be defeated. We as women of Venezuela do not surrender against any kind of imperialism. We built the organization of the communal organization, so we've been able to struggle against criminal blockade. Without feminism, there's no socialism, and we thank deeply Commander Chavez, who have awakened us and made us get out of our house. It will never get back there. Long live the collective building of popular feminism. Thank you so much, sisters, for listening to me. Thank you so much, dear Marcia. Well, we are about to finish this amazing, beautiful encounter. We've had so much enrichment. We have a clear scenario of the struggle for the emancipation of women today in each continent. We've seen how each comrade has shown us the ways of organization and also the challenges in their territories, and how these challenges are shared, and they are part of this net that we need to keep on building from Venezuela, from the Simon Bolivar Institute. Are really grateful to all the comrades that are here today, and also the ones who are through streaming, that is in our YouTube channel, and all the people that are here today. And we want to use this space to tell you, as you've manifested, this forum, this international forum, will continue. We are telling you that very soon in Venezuela, we will receive the first international feminist brigade that is named after Alexandra Kollontai. We will be receiving comrades from all over the world, and all the movements of women, of communal councils, and all the strong women that Maduro is supporting. We're going to have this first experience that we want to be spread. After this first experience, we want to have more spaces of exchange of women of the world, and we want this space to be to allow us to show the ways of popular organization that today our comrades of Venezuela try to sum up how this works, and we want you, our sisters of the world, to be able to live this experience, to visit these spaces, not only in Caracas, but other places, this invitation is open, because the first experience will help us organize even further encounters. This is our commitment from Venezuela. We thank you so much for being here today. And my sister, Layan, that was working so hard on this call and this organization. And I would like to hear her words. And from here, we tell you, we do not surrender. We keep on working for the struggle of women around the world.
Laura, thank you so much. I think you said it all, venceremos. We are so excited to continue building and to continue exchanging in all its different forms. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our interpreters for making this possible for all of us to participate. And we will see you very soon in the next steps towards building our anti-imperialist, anti-patriarchal struggle in all of its forms. See you all very soon.